Howdy nerds, my name is River. Welcome back to Wind Swirls and Leaps. This is my relatively new YouTube channel where I hope to make videos all about my love of analog hobbies, but primarily journaling, planning, fountain pens, and stationery. So if any of that interests you, it would mean so much to me if you took a moment to make sure you are subscribed. Thank you. So today's video is really exciting. Today's video is going to be about which planners I'll be using in 2026. A Techo Kaigi, if you will. Techo Kaigis are like my all-time favorite type of video to watch on YouTube, so I am thrilled to be making my own for the first time. So 2 of these planners I use for actual planning, but the others I use more so for tracking or recording or journaling. I do have a bunch more journals that I use. For example, just on my desk right now, I have my morning pages journal, which has some field notes in it. This is my traveler's notebook, which I am using for memory keeping. I also happen to have my D&D notebook on my desk right now. I played a D&D campaign, and this is the notebook I sometimes use for that. I also have on my desk right now my Galen leather notebook that I use kind of as scratch paper or thinking. Like, this is my messy notebook. If I need to figure something out, I'm using this notebook. So in addition to this, I also have like my dream journal that I keep at my bedside table. I have my 5-year diary, and I'm also married to the person behind YouTube's Best Commonplace channel. So obviously I'm working on my own commonplace system in the background as well. So yeah, I've got various project notebooks going all at once, and I'm not going to go over all of these journals in this video. That would be just like a completely different video. I think in 2026 I might film like a journal ecosystem video, as the kids are calling it these days, where I go over all my journals, including my planners. But that's not this video. This video will specifically be about the planners I'm using in 2026. So let's clear these away. Okay, so first let's start with the planners I'm using specifically for, well, planning. And that's going to be this Hobonichi Weeks and this Traveler's Notebook. Okay, so first starting with the Hobonichi Weeks, this is the en route to Kumamoto Port at dawn, and this is going to be used in a traditional planner sense. So appointments, events, to-dos, birthdays, chores, daily tasks, that kind of stuff. So we can go ahead and take a look inside, but before we do, because I will say I put Post-it notes on all the different sections, and I've done a little bit of setting up just to dip my toes into the planner. But before I do that, let me pull out the last Hobonichi Weeks I used in this way, and that was this one in 2024. So this planner to me is meant to be very functional. In the past, I did not do any decorating in this planner. I might do some decorating in 2026 just because this week's is so pretty and I want to spend a lot of time in it. But I can show you a little bit of how I planned in this week's in 2024. Basically the months were just used to record important dates, and then in the weekly section, I would use the left-hand side to put day-specific events or tasks, and then on the right-hand side I would put things I wanted to get done at any point that week. And that's it. Like, super basic, super simple. It didn't look pretty. There's really like no important information in here. It could probably, be thrown out at the end of the year, but I feel attached to this week, so I won't be doing that. But yeah, let's take a look at this one here. So what are my plans for 2026? I'm not going to use this calendar spread here. In the past, I've used this spread for tracking my menstrual cycle and also tracking when I'm sick, but I'm going to be doing that in a different planner, so I'm probably not going to do anything in here with that. On this page, I'm going to be doing a little spending tracker. I've never tracked my spending on pen and paper, and I thought that this might be a simple way to get started doing that. That doesn't feel too intimidating or time consuming, so I'm gonna attempt to do that. In the monthly section, again, you know, really basic events, appointments, birthdays, you know, when I have my D&D hangouts, when I'm going to get my hair cut, just all the basic things you would put in your monthly planner. And then for the weekly section, I actually went ahead and set up 4 different options for layouts and setups that I might want to try. I did do them in pencil, so it is possible that I'm going to erase the ones that I didn't like and just do the one that I figured out that I did like. So this first one was simple. It was just like, you know, events, appointments, day specific to-dos, and then some trackers. This one was like the most simple setup, but I don't know, for some reason I didn't love the way it looked. The next one I tried was a much more complicated setup. It took a lot more time to list out my to-dos rather than putting them in a tracker, so I didn't love this version either. The third one I tried is definitely my least favorite. I gave each day of the week its own box and then one additional box for any other tasks, and this is just like, yeah, it doesn't look good, and I don't think that it would work for me. And then the last one that I put together, I think this is what I'm gonna end up going with. So on the left-hand side, I'll just have my like day-specific events and day-specific to-dos. I'm not sure yet if I wanna do the events on the left side or on the right side. Let me know if you have any opinions on that. And then on the right side, I just took some of my daily and weekly tasks and I put them in 4 different trackers, and I think that this division is going to be really helpful for my brain. And then at the bottom, I have pretty much half the page to put any additional to-dos that I'd like to get done that week. So I'm really liking the way this turned out. I'm pretty sure I'm going to stick with this. And then the weeks has, I think, something like 72 pages, notes pages in the back. But for me, again, like this planner for me is just super functional. I'm not trying to set up any crazy spreads and, you know, spend a lot of time in it. However, the back does get used as scratch paper, you know, like if you're out and you need to take some notes, maybe you're at the doctor and you need to write some things down, or, you know, you're with friends and you need to split the bill. This is where I'll do the math. So I don't foresee myself using all of it up, but I'm glad to have it here. And then in the back, you know, there's the various spreads, but honestly, I don't plan on using them. Again, you know, this one is all about keeping it simple for me and just making sure that, you know, all my tasks are written down and yeah, it just remains functional. I think that my lights are buzzing. I don't know if y'all can hear that. I'm gonna go turn them off. Okay, yeah, those were my lights. I'm so sorry if you heard a buzzing for the first part of this video. Really strange. Okay, so yeah, I think that's it for this one. Again, keeping it super simple, just, you know, functional appointments and events and to-dos. I will say, I know that I recently posted my entire Hobonichi collection video, but I may or may not have decided to pick up a Tragan cover for this week's. Yeah, whoops. Y'all will get to see that in a future video for sure. Okay, so next I have the Love and Trip Traveler's Notebook in passport size. This beautiful deep red is just gorgeous, and I have this little penny with a heart cut out that I've had forever, and I've never used it for anything, but I just thought this was perfect together. So this is going to be my YouTube planner, and I actually have already started using it. So let's take a look inside. Okay, so first up I have the little traveler's folder, And inside I have a few things. First, I have these small sticky notes that I'm going to be using in this planner, and I'll show you what that looks like because, like I said, I've already started using this. And then this is just like the little stuff that came with the Passport monthly diary booklet. I already used the stickers, as you'll see. I've got that in here for now. And then I have my pencil board. I really liked this one from this year, and I really enjoy the theme, the traveler's spirit. I think that's really cute because, I don't know, it just makes me feel included. Like, even if I'm not traveling, I'm a traveler because I have the traveler's spirit. So yeah, I've got those things in here. And then in terms of this setup, I have two books. So I have just the Love and Trip refill. This is just a blank notebook. And this is going to be used for brainstorming, just writing out my video ideas. If I ever need to write down some notes in order to film my videos, I can work that out in this notebook. So it's just, you know, a thinking notebook. And then I have the 2026 monthly diary planner. As you can see, I put all the stickers on the front of it, and then I decorated the inside with my little letters that I cut out for magazines. I'm obsessed with these big dot circle stickers. I love those so much. But let me show you what I'm planning to do in here. So this basically just has, you know, every month of 2026, but because I started YouTube in October, I wanted to set up October and November for myself as well. So one evening I took the time to get my ruler out and measure out those boxes and build my October and November calendar. So for October, I just wrote out the videos that I posted in October, and if you can see in the corner, I wrote my subscriber count because that is really exciting to me to have as many subscribers as I have. So yeah, that's October. Oh, and then these stamps are so cute. These are from Hobonichi. I think you can buy them other places as well, but they're basically number people, like people making numbers. So cute. And then this is November. So here you can see the little post-it notes that I've been using. Basically what I do is if I have a video idea, I write it on a post-it note, and then I put it where I think I'm going to post that video. So then I can start planning out my month and my week of like, okay, like on this day I need to film this video. But then if something gets, you know, changed or I want to switch it around, they're just post-it notes, so I can peel them off and put them on a different week. I've even already started planning into December. So here's December. I've already got some video ideas going. I've even got some in January and February. And, you know, nothing is set in stone. All of this can change. I might, you know, decide to film something else, but these are really useful because once you're done with it, you just throw it out and then you can fill in what actually happened that month as like a little record. I think in this front page here, I might track my subscriber count every day or my watch hour count every day, because I think I can track both. If I track my subscribers in the monthly, then I could use this to track my hours watched on my channel, which might just be really fun to see. So yeah, that's about it for this little traveler's notebook. I'm really excited to be using this, and so far it's already been really helpful. Okay, so now let's have a look at the planners I'll be using, not for planning, but for tracking or recording or journaling. All right, let's start out with another Hobonichi weeks. So this is the Be Not Defeated by the Rain weeks, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna use this in my Go Out cover in mint. I actually already started putting some stickers that I might need for this in here, so I'm really excited to use this cover with this. I just think they look really good together. And this is gonna be my reading/media journal. Now, last year I attempted a reading only journal in a week's, So this was the weeks that I used this past year. I guess it's still technically this year. I kind of stopped using it, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, this was my reading journal. And what I did basically was on the monthly section, I would print out little stickers of the books that I read that month. And then in the weekly section, I would use the left-hand side to write about what I read that day, just specifically like the name of it. And then on the right-hand side, I would write like a little journal entry, a little reflection of what I thought about it. And then in the notes section, I printed out these larger stickers of each book and some star rating stickers. And I was planning to write out reviews of all of the books that I read. However, life got in the way. I didn't end up prioritizing this part of the journal, but honestly, I don't think that writing reviews or my thoughts on the books in this way is something that I want to do going forward anyway. So you'll see how I'm going to change that in my 2026 journal. Okay, so in this journal, let's see what we have. No plans to use this spread here. Okay, so first is the spread. I'm thinking of just marking a little dash or like maybe using a highlighter even to just mark, did I read? Yes or no? Reading is something that I found for myself. I tend to binge. So like I'll read 3 books in a row. I'm reading every day, every spare minute that I have, I'm reading my book. And then when I'm finished, I'll end up going like 2 weeks without even touching a book. And I would really like in 2026 to make a better habit of reading, even if it's in smaller chunks of time, every single day or most days, rather than, reading for 3 weeks and then not reading at all for another 3 weeks. So my goal is to hopefully fill out most of the days on this tracker. Then in the monthly section, again, I'm just going to print out the covers of the books that I read. And I think I'm just going to stick to books. I'm not going to include any other media in this section. And then on the bottom, I'm thinking that if any of the books I read that month end up being one of my favorites, I'm going to just make note of it on the bottom. Okay, and then in the weekly section, I'm thinking of doing, again, something really similar to the last one, where I'm going to just, have like a little journal entry reflection of what I read, but I'm also going to include in here all other sorts of media. So if I watched a film, if I watched a TV show, or if I listened to a new album, or I listened to a new podcast. So the left-hand side will simply be the name of what that was, and the right-hand side will be a little journal entry or reflection of my thoughts on that media. This is the Japanese version of the planner, so the 365-day checkoff comes before the note pages, and I think with this little spread, I'm just going to, at the end of the year, count up how many days I read and then fill in the bubbles of how many days I read. The goal being 365, we'll see if I can get there. And then for the notes pages, I'm going to be making journal spreads of the TV/music/movies that I am watching. I think because all other media that I consume is a much smaller number than the amount of books that I consume, I'm going to be more motivated to fill this out. I also have the goal of watching all of the Studio Ghibli movies this year with my wife. We're going to try to watch all of them. And I think it'd be really fun to make little spreads of, screen caps from the movies and what I thought about them. Okay, so in the back of the weeks, we have the My 100 spread. I think here I'm just going to list out all of the books, TV shows, films, music, and podcasts that I listen to or consume. Although I read a lot of books, I'm definitely trying to consume less media overall and be really intentional with what takes up my time. So I don't imagine that I will need more than 100 spaces. On this spread here, I think at the end of the year, I might just make a list of my favorites. So on the left-hand side, I'll probably write out or print photos of my favorite books, and then on the right, I'll write out or print my faves of all the other media that I've consumed this year. That's it for this week's. One little tip I wanted to share is that the little clear pocket that comes inside your weeks, most people put them on the covers, whether it's the front or the back, but I actually prefer to turn it and put it on this inside part of the book, because if you ever put a cover on cover on your weeks, for example, this pocket on the cover on cover would cover up this pocket. So I highly recommend you put it here. So that was my reading and media journal. Let's take a look at the next one. Okay, so next I have the Nolty 1111 or 1111. This is a pocket-sized planner that I was completely influenced into using by Chris from L&M. I'm sure y'all already follow her, but if you don't, what are you doing? I am honestly just trying to be as cool as her. So when I saw her testing out this little guy, I had to grab one for myself, and I am kind of in love with it. So I'm going to be using this little planner as my language learning tracker / journal. So let's take a look. First, on the outside, I decided to attach a traveler's notebook elastic and the pen that I plan to use in this journal. This is the Moomin or Mahjong mini fountain pen. It's an eyedropper, and I'll show you later which ink I have this filled up with. And then again, this is just a traveler's elastic. I put this little plastic bead that I've had since I was a kid on it, just to make it extra cute. And then here is the planner. So this Nolty planner has gorgeous cream paper with this green text and then orange text for weekends and holidays, and it performs beautifully. So in the back, there are some note pages, and I tested out some inks, did a little swatching to figure out which ink I wanted to use. I ended up going with the Franklin Christoph Graphite 4B. It looks really dark in this swatch. It's not as dark as that when you put it in the pen. It looks more like an actual 4B pencil, and I like the contrast of the black with the green and orange and cream paper. But anyway, let's go to the start of this planner. So in the front there is a year to glance calendar, and then there is one of these trackers here. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to use this. I'm still thinking about that. But then we get into Gantt charts. So this is the main reason I bought this planner, is that the whole beginning section is a Gantt chart for every month of the year, and I believe it's 10 spaces that you get, so 10 habits that you can track. Yeah, like I said, I'm going to be using this as my language learning journal. I am learning Spanish through the comprehensible input method, and so every day I'm listening to about 2 hours of Spanish, and there's different ways that I might go about that. So I'm just tracking to make sure I'm doing it every day, getting it done. Yesterday, I wasn't able to get my full 2 hours in, but I still did a little bit, so I decided to put a dot instead of an X, and then if I get my full 2 hours in, I'm putting my X's. And then, after the Gantt charts, there are just, you just get into the weekly section of the journal, and I think for this, I'm just going to go about it similarly to my reading and media journal. So on the left hand side, I'm going to talk about what exactly I listened to that day, or perhaps even more so any milestones that I'm hitting with Spanish. I think 2026 is going to be a great year for my language learning. I'm going to start reading in Spanish and yeah, there's just a few exciting things I have coming up in terms of Spanish. So, for example, if I go to the library and get some like Spanish kids books, I definitely want to write those in here and then write a little reflection of how my Spanish is going that day or that week. And yeah, I just think that this is going to be the perfect size for what I'm trying to do with this notebook. Definitely let me know if any of you have used one of these little Nolty planners before. I'm really impressed with it, honestly, and I think more people in this community would enjoy it. All right, so there's my little Nolty. Okay, so the final planner that I'm going to be using in 2026 is the Hobonichi Arts&Science A6 planner. If you haven't seen these before, they're pretty much the same as the original Hobonichi planner, but it has a black cover instead, and then on the inside, instead of all the cute rainbow colors, it's mostly just black and then red for weekends and holidays. This is going to be my health and wellness journal. This past year, I attempted a health and wellness journal. As a chronically ill person, there's a lot of things regarding my health that I like to keep track of. And yeah, this past year, it didn't really go so well. I was using this Hobonichi Weeks as my health and wellness planner, and I will show off a couple things in here. So in the monthly section, I was just writing out any important events related to my health. I would also write out things like if someone around me had gotten sick, I would write out which day I was near them. Any medical appointments or procedures were listed in the monthly. And then in the weekly, on the left-hand side, at the time, tracking my food was something that was really important to my health and well-being. So I was tracking out what I was eating. And then on the right-hand side, I was tracking my sleep and then any other relevant health information, maybe how I was feeling, if I had a headache, if I didn't sleep well. For example, on this date, I wrote that my mom had tested positive for COVID and I had been with her a couple days prior, so I wanted to just take note of that. And yeah, this unfortunately didn't work out because the paper was so bad. I know I've mentioned that so many times on my YouTube channel already, but this planner, it was just the worst. I couldn't even use a ballpoint pen and it would bleed through, so I just got really frustrated with it and I didn't feel like purchasing another planner. And I didn't want to set up a whole notebook to track my health stuff, so I ended up just abandoning it, but I'm going to try again in 2026. So let's open this up to see what I'm thinking of doing. Is there anything here? No. Okay, so first we have the yearly calendar. This is where I'm going to track my menstrual cycle and when I get sick. The way I go about this normally is I use one of the Hobonichi Jetstream pens, and I use the red pen for menstrual cycle tracking, and then I use the blue pen for tracking when I'm sick. Just provides a really easy, at a glance look at my year in that way. And then the next pages are these tracking pages. So you end up having about 10 spaces, I think it is, that you can track different things. So I just wrote out some different symptoms, some different health things that I experienced that I want to track. And so I'll write those each year and then I'll be able to track them throughout the year. I also will include my menstrual tracking and sick tracking in these pages as well, just by circling the numbers with either the red or the blue pen. Next, we have the monthly section, and similar to how I used it in the weeks, I'm going to write down any of my appointments, any medication changes, any events, if I'm sick, any, insurance bills that are due, any procedures, that sort of thing. Then we get to the daily section. So in this book, every month starts with a blank page that you can use for that month. I think I'm going to use this page every month in reflection. So at the end of January, for example, I'll come back to this page and write down anything of note that happened that month and put which day it was so that then I can reference that specific day in the journal. And then for the daily section, I'm going to be doing just general journal entries of how I'm feeling, if there's anything I need to make note. If I get sick, I can write down, like my temperature tracking, or if I'm tracking my blood pressure, any notes from doctor's appointments, any exercise notes. It's all just going to go in here. And if there's a day where I don't need to track any of that or write about any of that, it's just going to be blank. And if there's a day where the whole page is filled, then so be it. I think I'll have enough space for everything that I want to use this for. This journal does have some note pages in the back. I don't have anything specific in mind. I think if I just need some extra space, maybe if I'm at the doctor and I want to take some notes, I could use these pages for that. And then there is a section for important contacts, and I actually am going to fill this out with my doctor's phone numbers and also their office room numbers. Some of the doctors that I go to are all in the same building, but they all are in different offices, and I often mix them up and confuse them, and I'm like, wait, which floor am I going to again? And then also when I'm in that building, my cell phone usually doesn't work, like the reception is really bad, so I'm not always able to double check on Google or in my email, so it's nice to have that information on a piece of paper. The last spread I'm thinking of using in this journal is the My 100 spread. I'm considering tracking my meditation practice. I have been meditating for many years now, but it's usually pretty on and off for me. I'd say I usually meditate about half the year, and 100 spaces might just cover the amount of times I meditate in a year. So I'm thinking of just like writing the date that I do it, but we'll see. I'm not married to it. Sometimes meditation is, like a daily practice for me, and sometimes it's not. Whether or not it is probably doesn't need to be tracked at this point in my life, but if I feel inspired to do that, then I have this spread here. And I think that's it in terms of what I plan to use for this journal. Yes. All right. So again, that was my health and wellness Hobonichi planner. This is actually the only A6 planner I'll be using this year. So I'm going to start out in my squirrel cover, and if at any point I want to switch out into a new cover, I will do that. All right, so that was a look at my 2026 planners. I will say there is one last thing I'm thinking of adding, and I've been thinking about it for the past few months, and then I saw that Sai over at the Analog Archives showed off his EDC setup, and yeah, now I really want to add it to my lineup. And that is a little mini 5 rings binder. Sometimes they're called, I think, A8 binders. Like Moterm calls theirs an A8, but they're most traditionally called a mini 5 rings binder. So this is something that I'd like to use as both a wallet and on-the-go monthly schedule, just so that when I'm out, if I don't have the space to bring my weeks, depending on what bag I'm bringing, I can just have my wallet with me, and that'll have a monthly calendar in it with my appointments or events. Just so, like, for example, if I'm like at the doctor or if I'm at the dentist, I can make my next appointment knowing what my year ahead looks like. There are a few brands that make the mini 5 rings binders. My dream is definitely an Ashford binder. However, they are a Japanese company, and currently with tariffs, I'm not sure I want to shell out that expense just yet. It's definitely in the future, like my plan to get an Ashford, but at this point I might hold off on that. I've also been looking at the Anne Liebe mini binder, but again, it's really expensive, and that one actually doesn't have any pockets that would be useful for a wallet setup. There's also the Reime Da Vinci. However, I don't like the pockets on that one. There's also a plotter, obviously, but the plotter has no pockets, which doesn't feel very useful as a wallet. And then finally, I've seen the Moterms lately. So Moterm is, really readily available in America. Like, you can literally get it on Amazon, and their version of the Mini 5 Rings binder is really designed to be a wallet. My spouse, Robbie, over at the Sunshine Archives, recently bought the little Moterm one for themselves to check out. So luckily we have one on the way to our house right now that I'm going to be able to get my hands on and get a feel for to see if that's something that'll work for me. If you're using a little mini binder as your EDC, definitely let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear how that is working out for you. All right, so this has been my 2026 planner lineup. Let me know if you have any thoughts or suggestions or questions looking at my lineup. And I would also love to hear if you all are set with your own lineup for 2026. Are you making any changes from last year, or have you found a system that really works for you? I'd love to hear from you down below in the comments. And with that, I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!